feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the DaneMoore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Monday evening at September 29th. And the plan for today's show is to recap Wolves Media Day with Kyle Theige, myself, Kyle, and the rest of the media. We did interviews with Tim Conley, Chris Finch, and the whole Wolves roster today. Throughout the week, I'll be sure to mix in some sound bites and stuff from those interviews. But for today, it's just me and Kyle talking about our biggest takeaways from Wolves Media Day 2025. Let's go. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company, and Kyle and I are actually heading to Falling Knife after we record this podcast. We are going there to meet with the Falling Knife team because they are beginning to brew Second Apron. That is our pod-themed beer, Second Apron, that will again be a beer you can find in liquor stores throughout Minneapolis this fall and winter. The actual release date of Second Apron will be October 18th at Falling Knife, when myself and Kyle and Britt Robson will all be there for Wolves Fest. You're going to want to come to Wolves Fest at Falling Knife on October 18th from 3 to 9 p.m. just to hang out. We'll be doing a live show at 5 p.m., but that day you will also be able to purchase Second Apron for the first time. And the labels on the beer this year sound like they're going to be pretty awesome. We are excited for another season working with Falling Knife this year, and we would love to see all of you at Falling Knife on October 18th for Wolves Fest. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis.
Hey, yeah.
All right, we are now joined by Kyle Theige in studio. Kyle, you made the trek out here for a few days this week. We're going to do some takeaways in this episode, but we're also excited to have Alan Horton join us here in studio for an episode tomorrow. Great to have you here. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I got more caffeine. I got my Skims underwear on. The Wolves season officially starts, as many other teams, today with Media Day, which is like, as we joked about, like the syllabus day. You get to kind of see everyone, check in on their summer, kind of get all the buzzwords and the terms that the team wants to use. And I think there was a big one today that we'll hear all season. So yeah, I'm excited. The 25-26 season starts now.
So let's do it. Let's just, we literally just came from Target Center and are just going to immediately give takeaways. I wouldn't say it was like the craziest media day of the, 10 years we've been doing this for, but I think the word you're referring to there is continuity. And I'll start there as that for our first takeaway. That's an intention, obviously, this season. We've been saying that last week. People have been writing about continuity being a really important piece of this team. What stood out about them talking about continuity and the value of it, the players? We've just been talking about this more theoretically.
Well, I thought there was two interesting things, and it doesn't surprise anyone, but one came from Ant and it seemed like really positive, and the other came from Finch and it was not negative. It was just more Chris Finch on brand. But Ant had some quote about how talking about continuity is like, we've got like this cheat code for the early in the season. Like all these other teams have all these other new players are trying to acclimate. He basically said like, we should win a bunch of games early on in the season, which is something I've kind of been talking about. Like maybe they get out of the gates early. And then Finch, who spoke before Ant, kind of went the other way. And he talked about how, I think the quote was, continuity is only valuable if it pays dividends early, which is a bar. But like, that's also true, right? I mean, they're kind of saying the same thing, but coming from different angles of like, yeah, this is going to be beneficial for us if we use it and lean into it and we all kind of accept our roles and stuff. And then Ant was, and we can get into Ant more later, but like he was about as comfortable today as he's ever been. But it's a big thing. Tim Conley mentioned it. Jalen Clark mentioned it. Like, this is the second iteration of the first, kind of run it back tour when they had the year one of Cat and Rudy, and it didn't really go well, and the Cat's injury. And then year two, they just said, we're going to have all the same guys. We're going to lean into that. They go to the Western Conference Finals. This year, kind of the same thing. They're coming off a Western Conference Finals trip, but I think they're just leaning into, everyone knows, and they, like half the guys today, or at least a third of them, mentioned coming out of the All-Star break, or that like Bones talked about it, ironically, that second half of the season when it started to click. I think that's what they're going to put a pin in. That's the film they're going to watch, and they're going to try to, as Chris Finch always says, kind of stack skills. They're going to kind of stack off of that, because Tim Conley said it himself, the West has never been more competitive. And I think that continuity is their, trump card to try to defeat the best teams in the West.
If they use it.
If they use it,
Finch's point, it's
yeah.
like, or you're just at neutral. It takes a couple of weeks, and if you don't capitalize on that, then you're the same as the team who made a bunch of changes. I've rattled this stat off a bunch of times in the last week or so, but every year the Wolves haven't had continuity in the Finch era. They made a big roster change before the season. They started 10-10. 10-10 in 21-22, 10-10 in 22-23, 10-10 last season in 24-25. In the 23-24 season, run it back with Rudy year 2, they start that season 16-4. And that's a data point. And so like we could tell ourselves a story with that. Well, continuity equals better. And by this much, 10 wins versus 16. And I think I believe that, but I knew people were going to be talking about continuity today. I knew the players would be asked about it. I wanted to get like a more real value of what that could be, or what the players would said. You referenced Finch. I started asking Dante about it. And I was like in the middle of my question, asking Dante DiVincenzo about it. I'm like, I don't know if DiVincenzo's had a lot of continuity in the entirety of his career. And I'm like, he was in Sacramento for a minute there too, and has bounced around. But when I brought it up to him, he brought up Milwaukee and the value that he saw of continuity in Milwaukee. And that is a recent example of a team going so far, bringing back a similar team, kind of playing off of that continuity, the core they had of Middleton, Giannis, Lopez, those guys, and actually use that to propel themselves to a championship. So there obviously are examples around the league, and maybe it's an undervalued thing in today's NBA, or underappreciated, because so many teams are making big moves year over year. It's, I don't know, how many teams would you even say are coming into this season with a lot of continuity? You know, I say that to mean there's potential for it. If there is real value in this, I think there's potential for the Wolves to have something in their pocket that few other teams have going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, the one that comes to mind off the top is the defending champs, that they're going to have a ton of continuity. But then you kind of look across the board, conversely, in like the Rockets and Nuggets. The Nuggets have most of their same guys. I thought it was really cool, by the way. Ant also acknowledged, like, he's very logged on to the offseason transactions, and he was like, Denver is going to be really, really good. But Denver and Houston are two teams that come to mind of, like, they have big pieces that they're trying to acclimate in and kind of fit around. So Minnesota's in more of that OKC tier, despite the fact that the last time they played real basketball, they didn't really have any answers for OKC. But I think they're going to lean into that continuity, but also too, I think continuity, if you kind of go 30,000 feet back, I think some of it, which is a little more vague in the description or the definition of it, is just guys being familiar with their surroundings, their city, each other. I mean, those are the things of
human stuff.
Yeah, like we talked about, like everyone on this team now that really matters that's going to play this season has gotten paid in like the last 18 months, right? The coaching staff's all extended. The ownership stuff's all cleared up. Tim Conley's now just in his contract for the next 2 years. Those things I think are also, and Finch kind of touched on that, like that's going to be easier to just, I mean, they tip tomorrow, like tomorrow morning, they're in the gym doing training camp. They're not going to have to kind of go around, as I asked Finch, and like introduce each other and do the name tag thing. Like they're just going to be able to get into building off of all the stuff that they really liked about last season. And I also think going into some of the stuff that they didn't like from last season, you know, like Ant and Julius posting up on the same block, like trying to clear up some of those things. And I think you already saw that. One of the biggest takeaways, but it goes back to continuity. A lot of guys talked about when asked, how do you build a good defense, or how do you build the right habits in training camp? And they're all like, actually, it started this summer. We were all here. Most of us have been here for 2 months. So I think there wasn't really an off season for some of them. Like you see Ant and Julius in the lab working together. So continuity will be a theme and a drinking game that we have all season long. You're going to hear it brought up by everyone, but I think that is kind of their mantra of like, we all know each other. We've been through a lot of shit. You know, Dante and Julius were two of the happiest guys in the room today because a year ago they were on a plane. So I think it's going to be, I think that'll be a big thing for them. And I think whether it's a buzzword or not, they all seem to, whether it be Leonard Miller all the way up to Ant, like they all seem to kind of embrace this idea of we all know now, and it's all about winning, and everything else we've kind of crossed off our list. So,
yeah, and you bring up Houston and Denver, and I'm just kind of going through in my head of obviously
like
Denver has a similar core to what they've had, but you're bringing in, of a new piece and Cam Johnson and letting go of Michael Porter Jr. That's not cap for Julius Randle, but that's pretty substantial. Obviously, Kevin Durant in Houston. I was going to say the Lakers, but I don't even know if they had enough time last year to even begin that. And then you have Ayton, and I don't feel like they would be a team that has a ton of room to benefit off of continuity. The Clippers, bringing in new vets who will play. The Mavs add Cooper Flag. Like, as good as the Western Conference is, it does seem like the Wolves and especially the Thunder have a pretty major leg up there, if there is in fact real value in the idea of that. You want to move on to another takeaway?
Yeah, another one that I had on my list, if we just kind of go snake draft, this is super easy, but I think this is year 9 for us doing these media day things, and we've been around the entire time Ant has been here. And I'm going to throw this back to you. Like, how did you just feel his overall vibe was today? Because the quote that stood out to me was 3 words, but he always references C. Hines, who is his player development guy and assistant coach now on the Wolves. He's been with him the whole time. We talked about how greatness is boring.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of his mantra all summer long. And he's always such a joy to talk to, and he's always got such good energy, but he seems like he's heard all the shit that was bad about his game, right? Like all the times that he would play the Hornets and he'd have 14 points in a loss. Like, he seems to have a lot of answers for whether it be the go-to move that he didn't want to tell us about yet, but that he has in his back pocket, or just he seems about as locked in as I can remember on being a leader on this team, despite only being 24 years old and trying to get this thing to what we talked about in August and September. How do you break that kind of firm ceiling you've built now as a gentleman's sweep team in the Western Conference Finals? He seems ready to roll the ball out tomorrow morning.
First media day where he seemed like a vet to me,
well said. Yeah.
And even I'm just thinking of last season's media day. He didn't, not that he seemed immature or anything like that, but it all seemed kind of like a lot to him. It was a lot. Carl, his vet, had just been traded, but there was still, it just felt a little bit more like youthful and not necessarily in the best way. I don't know. We talked to him for 12 minutes or whatever today. I'm sure he's still the same guy, but didn't he almost look like older?
Yeah.
This is stupid stuff to even be talking about, but if you're asking me what my initial thought was as he sat down there, I thought, I'm not looking at a guy that's at the beginning of his career anymore. And I thought the way he talked sounded like a guy who's done hundreds of interviews and media sessions and stuff like that, which juxtaposed against, what we came to know and love about Ant earlier in his career. Like, those media sessions in 2021 went a lot different than today was. And I think it's just an example of a kid growing up into being a man, and he enters this season unambiguously the leader of this team, which he was last year, but on media day, he didn't know that. He hadn't really put that all together yet. So yeah, I view this as Anthony Edwards' team, and I feel like he knows that now. And that to me felt a little bit different.
That's a great point, because despite what you might have thought, until Carl was removed from the thing, then I think Ant kind of always deferred, or was like, hey, we're both kind of, running the pirate ship type stuff.
Yeah.
And then last year it was so sudden, and he kind of does wear his emotions on his sleeve, even though he's a pretty reserved guy. But you could tell last year he was like, we just traded Cat 72 hours ago. It kind of hit him. This year, I think you're spot on. And there was a quote, by the way, all of the media day stuff, I believe, is on the Timberwolves YouTube page. We're just doing this right after so we can pump this out. But there was a good quote. They asked about, what have you learned, what it takes to win? And Anson, I was talking to Grady about this. I was telling him the most important thing I've learned, the teams that go deep in the playoffs, they're together. Like they really care about each other. It's easy to say we're brothers and act like it. But for instance, this year we had camps. I had a camp, Nas had a camp, a couple of guys had camps, and nobody knew about the camps. And I told Nas, next time you have a camp, let me know. I'm going to come. That's where it starts. I think it starts in the summertime. It's just things guys don't know because we're not used to winning. I think winning starts with being together, and it starts in the summertime, man. We got to be together. We got to be a team. We can't wait until the All-Star break to try to come together to become a team. We got to do it now. And that's like a playoff answer, right? That's like 27, 28-year-old kind of in the prime years of an NBA answer.
But not cliche.
I don't think so
maybe
either.
they sounds like parts of that. You read
not
it.
Cliche because we're not going to get into it. But when someone asked Nas about some of the personal stuff he recently went through, Nas was like immediately snapped and was like, Jane and Ant were there for me for what Nas was going through on the personal side. So I think that's an important quote to add in there because continuity isn't just, I know you or I know, what did Jalen Clark give a little trade secret ways? Like when Ant goes left, he likes to hit that step back. It's not just that, it's some of the other stuff that goes into, as much as you want to shit on them, and I did a lot, like those OKC Thunder post-game interview things when they were all together clowning on the reporters and stuff, like they were a close-knit team despite being a bunch of young guys. And I think that's part of what Ant's trying to do this summer of like, hey, it's not just about knowing each other. It's about like being there for one another. And if that translates onto the court, as cliche as that sounds, that's how you level up.
It's like an interesting way to build a roster now that I don't think was the way teams built rosters before. And pointing to the Thunder, right? Where you're built to win before your guys are in their primes. You know?
Yeah.
Like, do you remember that back 5-10 years ago? Was there a team that was a contender that was everybody was 26 years old or younger? No, I don't think that really existed before. I think oftentimes teams didn't they didn't make roster moves to really compete until their star players were in their primes. And that is a differentiator from how the Thunder have built themselves and how the Wolves have built themselves. That goes back to the Gobert trade. When he was 21 years old, like, nope, we're going now. And again, off the top of my head, I can't think of a lot of teams who deployed that strategy. The Wolves have their Mike Conleys and their Rudy Goberts and their, Joe Ingles a little bit more. They have some guys in their 30s on their roster, unlike the Thunder. But the core of the team is the young group there. And this season, I think we have moved into like, it's not one path or the other. The Rudy and Mike are a huge part of this, but they are towards the end of that timeline is towards the end of it. They're now a piece to me of the second timeline. And the second timeline is Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, and Jaden McDaniels, and elevating those guys. It seems to me like a team that is like, okay, it's time to empower these guys and to take the lid off of that a little bit while also effectively incorporating Julius Randle, who is 30 years old and in his prime. Rudy Gobert probably still in or close to his prime. It's a mix, but I don't know. I was just sitting there, and that was the first time where I go, oh yeah, the young group is the group, right? Does that make sense?
I know what you mean. Yeah. And it is kind of like a Venn diagram of how, like, if you look at how OKC built their team versus all via either the draft or like, obviously they get Shea in a trade, but basically through the draft or like the era before kind of OKC's runner. I mean, Golden State drafted all their guys too, but was kind of like the clear the cap space, go get three guys that have kind of gone through college in terms of their NBA first 4 or 5 years. And then when they're in their prime, put them together. The Wolves have kind of done it in a way of like building off of those draft picks or the guys they had, Nas, Jaden, and Ant, and then also kind of supplementing that with their own versions of like a Hartenstein or a Caruso. You know what I mean? So it's they've put together a really good roster, a roster that has already, I mean, again, I don't know why I keep going back to Bones Highland, but he was ironically maybe one of the best quotes today, but just talking about the brand when he got here, and he'd even mentioned, he's like, I knew about Minnesota for a couple of years because I had always been floated in trade rumors and stuff. But he's like, when you come to Minnesota to play basketball, you come here and all you're focused on is winning. And if you're listening to this and you just started following the team, you're like, oh, that makes sense. And it's like, if you're listening to this and you're 36 years old, like I am, like, that is so fucking crazy. So
Right.
I think it's just, I mean, again, it's all the kind of boring stuff or the stuff that doesn't entertain you or is not on Basketball Reference, but they have kind of cleared the deck of what I said in August. Like, there's no real distractions. Like, everyone's been paid, everyone's here, everyone wants to be here. I mean, even a guy like Joe Ingles, who probably could have just gone anywhere else, probably had a better opportunity to maybe get a minute on another team. Like, they kind of see a vision. And again, if you don't deliver on that vision, like Finch said, like, if you don't get those dividends early, we're going to be having way different conversations in my office again, come mid-November about who should play. But they're going to lean into that. They have the right ingredients. They might just need to tweak the formula a little bit, tweak the recipe, and that will be their game plan, I think, moving forward this training camp into preseason.
Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. We know there are a chunk of you out there who are trying to get a home improvement project done this fall. Get it done before winter is here. We would love it if you did that with Your Home Improvement Company. They are still offering the buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free deal. They have 30% off bathroom renovations, as always, but it could be any home improvement project. I know there's probably something in your house that you want to get taken care of before this winter comes around. All of their projects by Your Home Improvement Company offer great financing deals, require zero money down, zero interest, and zero payments until 2026. If you've been thinking about doing something, think about contacting Your Home Improvement Company by calling 866-777-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, and time is running out, kinda, for you to get your season-long Prize Picks lineups in. Will Anthony Edwards score more or less than 27.5 points per game this season? He scored 27.6 last year. Will Ant have more or less than 3.6 made threes per game this season? Last year, he made 4.1, more or less than 5.6 rebounds, more or less than 4.5 assists. All of those are up at Prize Picks and really fun to track over the course of the season. Just head to that NBA season tab at Prize Picks. There's always something going on over there, obviously football, but any sport. And as a reminder, just to put together a lineup at Prize Picks, all you need to do is put 2 or more picks in your lineup to win. If you do not yet have a Prize Picks account, make one. All you have to do is put in the promo code DANE when you sign up, or we would appreciate that. But if you do, you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code DANE when you create your account. If it's a snake draft, I believe you are up for another takeaway.
Happy birthday to Jade McDaniels, who continues to talk more. But he didn't, as always, didn't give us too much. But again, just kind of going through back in my brain, I'm going to let you draft the Dante stuff. But I just thought Jalen Clark, on a team that has so many guys, and maybe we can get into the Finch stuff about, who's going to bring the ball up or who's going to lead the team in assists. Jalen Clark was a revolution for me of just, he knows he's a role player and he wants to be the best damn role player that he can be. And to the point where when it's like, hey, so you asked such a great question. I've always wanted to ask that. Like, you're a defensive guy. You're a defensive stopper. You're, Northern Jose Alvarado. How do you work on that in the summer? And he goes, I don't really watch basketball as much as I watch like DB footage. And he talked about, he name dropped Patrick Surtain. He's like, I watch how DBs cover in the NFL. And I'm excited about him because I do think Terrence, of the young trio, Terrence, Robin, Jalen, Terrence is the guy that makes the most sense to just put in there. He's going to help with transition. He's an adult already. He's 24, 25. He was drafted, as an older rookie. And then Rob. But I do think already, again, somehow we're forgetting about Jalen Clark. And I think if Jalen Clark can deliver on what he said, which was pretty cut and dry, if I shoot 40% from 3 and guard the other team's best player, they have to play me.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pretty good answer from a guy who is probably now, with Nikhil out, Jalen Clark is not only going to fill that on the court role, but Jalen Clark might also now be the best quote you get in the locker room.
Oh, yeah. No, I thought that was interesting. And he started going off about Patrick Surtain. And I'm like, oh, okay, where's this going?
Broncos Bengals Monday Night Football.
Yeah, right. It actually made sense as you kind of talked about.
Absolutely.
it. And as a defensive back, like the limited ability he started talking about it because you can't really put your hands on guys in the NBA today. It's like, I'm not going to say which guys you can't do that to, but you can't do that all the time in the NBA. So he's like, I dedicated a lot of time this summer to learning how to defend basically without touching or at least being sneaky about the ways he was doing it. And he's like, if you look at defensive backs, that's what they have to do. And he goes, all of the defensive back stuff translates. Once they get past 5 yards, their route tree changes. And he compared that to, once they enter like into the 3-point arc, there's certain things they can't do anymore. So he's been a really good quote for a long time, but he became a really good role player at the end of last season. And I think both him and Terrence Shannon Jr. very much know that they do not even need to do X, Y, and Z. They need to do X.
Yep.
And that's it. And it actually stood out with me with Terrence. People started asking him, oh, it's your second year. I started asking, oh, is there more playmaking stuff? Is there more this and that you can add to his game? He's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do the things that Finch asks me to do because that's what this team needs me to do. And that's what I need to do to be able to play. Jalen Clark talked about, if I start doing anything more than I'm asked to do, I'm probably not going to be very good at it. And then I'm going to, make a mistake and get pulled from the game.
And that was his summer league.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because he referenced that, like, summer league, he was like, I tried to do everything. And that's probably why, I think he might have pointed to me. He's like, that's probably why you didn't think I played so well. It's like, because he did the thing where he tried to put too much on his plate. And back to your point, like, he knows, and that's probably why of that young trio again, he was the first guy to really get his number called last season, because Chris Finch knew Jalen Clark will give me X, right? In that Phoenix Suns game, we were both at, like, I need a defender. Jalen Clark gets in, and he just defended his ass off against Devin Booker. So
that's when he replaced Minot.
Yeah.
Because, you and I both like Josh Minot a lot. Actually, I mean, even as a basketball player too, we're intrigued by that. But why did Josh Minot never really get that opportunity? I think he had his vision on something more than being a role player. And there's nothing wrong with Josh for believing that. And there's nothing wrong with Terrence and Jalen think that they can be more in time. But the way to do it, I think, especially when Chris Finch is your coach, is nail the 100 level classes. Just ace those. Yeah. And then, in time, move on from there. That's just what getting time in the Timberwolves rotation, which is a team that went to the conference finals 2 seasons in a row, which was arguably the deepest team in the league last season. Sure, you lost Nikhil, but there's not like really even room if you're outside of the starting lineup to wow in training camp. Like, oh, wow, Bones Highland is doing this, or so-and-so Leonard Miller is doing that in training camp, and it's something big and impressive. Again, that kind of happened with Josh Minot last year. He was like the guy in training camp where it's like, oh, look, he was like, I'm shooting it more. I can take it off the dribble. I can guard different guys. And when you start spreading out the things that you can do, even if you're doing them well in training camp, I think when the game comes and your role in that game is to play 5 minutes in the first half and 5 minutes in the second half, you don't even have time to do more than one thing. That gives me confidence that Jalen Clark and Terrence Shannon will have success as role players this year. And that mentality gives me belief that Chris Finch will actually play them.
Yeah.
He can play them consistently, because he's just not looking for a guy off the bench to come in and be a do-it-all player. You have that in your kind of sixth man in Naz Reid. That is kind of Naz's role, is to be a 3, 4, and a 5, and an offensive player and a rebounder, and that. Everyone else who gets into this rotation at all, it's just the X. It's not the X, Y, and Z.
And again, if you can only watch one person's 2025 NBA Media Day YouTube highlights, go watch Jalen Clark, because another thing that really stood out was when he talked about cutting. Like, I would imagine now he's the best cutter on the team. I just think his basketball IQ is really, really high. And again, for a team that can be so stagnant or have a bunch of guys that, as we joked about last week, like top 5 and backwards passes, Jalen Clark even says, like, there's a lot of guys on this team that want the ball. I mean, even Mike Conley today was at his old age, like, hey, I would like to have the ball. And I have to tell Ant and Julius, like, I'm going to give you the ball back, I promise. for Jalen to be like, I'm trying to make, my impact on this game without having to touch the ball all the time or in catch and shoot things. I thought that was really noteworthy. I do have to ask you quick, because you've kind of always been you or Craig Kilborn have been like my shot mechanics guys. He was adamant when it's like, I need to shoot. If I shoot 40% and play defense on the best opponent, like I'm going to play and they're going to have to play me. Do you think he can shoot 40%?
It really stood out to me last season, just, being at like practices or before games and stuff. I felt like Jalen got really confident in his shot and started taking it faster, like not rushed, but faster. Where I think of 2 summer leagues ago, he was really loading it up, really conscientious about his form and stuff like that. And I have this just memory coming to my head of one day watching him shoot, 20, 30, whatever threes moving around the perimeter. I was like, oh, that's faster. And I think, generally speaking, quicker shot mechanics are signal a confidence in your shot mechanics. I think of Jalen as a confident dude. He's not like a 40% shooter in that he's one of the 20 best shooters in the league, but there's guys in the league who shoot over 40% from 3 in a season because they take the right ones and they have a consistent mechanic to it that they do over and over again. He's right. If he guards the way he guarded last season and he's getting left somewhat open to take 3 or 4 threes in a game and he's hitting those at a 40% clip, you make that player. I think any team makes that player work. And that's why that's an accurate quote by him. They can't not play me if I guard like I guard and I shoot 40%, as he did the final 25 games of the season last year. He just knows like what the blueprint is.
Yep.
And it's just about doing it now. Can he do it over and over again?
And again, I just think my biggest takeaway from him is that we know who the 5 starters will be, or we think we do, right? And then you have, like, let's say it's Mike and Ant and Jaden and Julius and Rudy, and then you obviously have Dante and Nas off the bench. And Chris Finch has talked about to Britt and to others about wanting to play 10. I don't think that will happen. Just, I think, even talking to Jim today, like, it's hard to get 10 people into a game regular minutes, but I think we've just kind of assumed that Terrence is that new 8th starter, and then maybe it goes right to Rob. And I would just, politely push back that I think don't overlook Jalen Clark and what role he could have on this team. I mean, the Jose Alvarado stuff, it's not just because of the way he can hide in the corner and go get an inbounds pass, but I just think that role and having guys on the team that don't need the ball to be impactful, especially like with cutting, how much Chris Finch loves a good cutter. I think Jalen Clark could have a really big season. Again, I'm with you, like the confidence with him, it's never gonna, he might point to the sky once after he hits a 3 after going 1 for 7, but I don't think that man will ever lose his confidence.
You mentioned Mike and in the point guard position. That was an area that we when Chris and I talked last week about what we want to figure out at media day, a big thing was the point guard position and get a feel of where they're leaning. And I think, as we put together, Mike is still a very big part of this team and Rob is still very young. And I think we're going down that path for the plan for what this team is this season. So where my head goes is, if you have determined that Mike is the first of the point guards and the point guard that's going to for sure be getting the 25 minutes a night, and Rob is going to be in the more variable off the bench point guard role, then I think you focus on Mike. Right? Because this is a position of need, and you ask yourself, okay, well, what does Mike need to be successful, and what does Mike need to then do to be successful? And that's what I asked him about, and it got in. He was like, I just want to be all-time quarterback. Yeah. He said, I wasn't expecting him to say the thing I need to be more comfortable is to have the ball in his hands, but that's the first thing out of his mouth. He's like, if I want to get in a rhythm, given the way I've played throughout my career, I need to have the ball in my hands. And he quickly said, it's not because I want to shoot it. I want to be all-time quarterback, and I want you go fly down the field, and I'll hit you by the basket. The Mike Conley thing did not work the first 40 games of last season. part of that was his health and his wrist that he was dealing with and the summer he had. But he did not have the ball in his hands. You look at the first 20, 40 games of the season, and that's because they were incorporating Julius. And Ant was taking a step forward in his usage. So Mike, the chameleon that he is, kind of just went to the corners and was not doing the things that Mike Conley can do to provide value for your team. He wasn't even shooting it well because he didn't have the rhythm of having the ball in his hands. Like, Mike's always a good shooter. He's been a good shooter for almost 20 years in the NBA right now. Why wasn't he a good shooter at the beginning of last season? It has to be the health and it has to be the rhythm. It could be age. People could point to that. I think we could somewhat rule out a little bit of the age stuff, given how good we saw Conley was the second half of the season. So, yeah, if I'm Ant and Julius and Finch, and I know that the quote unquote weak spot is on this roster, the point guard position, I'm having conversations about what do we do to put Mike in position to be successful. Okay, he needs the ball in his hands. I'm Ant. What can I do to be impactful with the ball not in my hands? You remember early career Ant? All right, D'Lo's taking this one up. Where did Ant go?
Corner.
Stood there, upright, ready to go play defense on the other side. Not engaged in it. If the theory is correct that Mike needs the ball in his hands more to be effective, then Ant and Julius need to be able to figure out how to play around that to some extent. And that's a big piece of the season to me, man, because hopefully Rob's has taken a step forward and is ready to go and can be an impactful point guard. But there's just some question marks to that, given that he's 20 years old and didn't really play his first season. I think you got to put Mike in position to succeed. And I don't think that's all on Mike. I think that's actually on Finch, Ant, and Julius as much as it is anyone.
I thought as entertaining as Jalen Clark's media day was, I thought Mike Conley's was hands down the most fascinating. Entering the 25-26 season, Mike Conley is going to be the 5th oldest player in the league, I think behind PJ Tucker, Kyle Lowry, LeBron, and Chris Paul. And he's played. I think he might have him by like months. Remember we talked about birthdays? Yeah. But he's played the 7th most amount of games. He's seen it all. He's done it all. And I thought, getting to know Mike a little bit, like he always just has the right answer. And he's always kind of, he's perfect for Minnesota Mike because he's Minnesota nice. He just always, and when you asked him those questions and he was like, I need the ball. I thought that was kind of like fascinating because it was him kind of being blunt or like assertive, right? Like not in a bad way, but just he had that joke about like, yeah, like we talk about it all the time. Him, Ant, and Julius talk about it all the time. Like, you guys just need to let me touch the ball more, but I promise you I'm not going to shoot that thing. Like I'm trying to get the ball to you in better spots. I think there is a little bit of a trust there. I said this to you, I think 2 weeks ago. I never really got a good chemistry on the court between Julius and Mike. I felt like if one of them had the ball, the other one did the Ant thing. I was like, I know this probably isn't coming to me. So, because if Mike's out there, he's running a lot of, maybe, or we would like him to run a lot of pick and roll with Rudy, or he's trying to get other guys set up. So I think that's going to be fascinating. And what really kind of was fascinating for the 9th time using that word is when Britt asked Finch, do you expect Ant, Julius, and Mike to kind of be the top 3 guys this season in terms of assists? Really basic question, but Britt is a wizard and it was kind of leading. And Finch was like, yeah, absolutely. And to me, that tells you some of the, like, I know you had John on and you guys talked about like maybe Dante could start, but then you hear Finch talk about how he likes Dante off ball more. To me, it's like, I'm going in this without hearing this, like that Mike's going to be the starting point guard. Dante's going to be doing more off ball stuff. And then Rob, if he can continue to show a level of attention to detail on defense, will get minutes, but we're not talking about timelines. We're not in the Rob Dillingham starting point guard timeline yet. And maybe we'll get there. I believe in that, but whether you like it or not, like Mike Conley is going to be a big part of this thing this coming season. And I think that, in my opinion, is a really good thing.
Yeah, I would say Rob is probably the number one person who could really earn something with how he plays in training camp.
I mean, Ant said he had a chip on his shoulder. Multiple guys were like, pretty just said the elephant in the room of like, Rob didn't have a great time last year being a lottery pick from Kentucky, not playing.
Yeah.
And again, his big brother Bones, who is my favorite player now, he said it too. So I think Rob has the greatest. If some guy just balled out in training camp, who has like the greatest stock up, it's going to be Rob.
Right. Like the delta would be the biggest. Whereas, and I kind of expect this, like I think Terrence will probably look really good in training camp to the staff and all that. But the role's kind of going to be the role, right? Like there's no way come October 22nd, Terrence is going to have earned something more than the 8th man role, right? There's not. Yeah. I mean, maybe over the course of the season, he could like. I'm not trying to put a ceiling on what Terrence can do this year, but there kind of is, as there was for Nikhil last year, right? Like Rob, I think there's just a whole range of how much he could play this season. I think they'll play him. But it could be the low end of the range. Could be, remember how you just play one little shift. He played like 6 minutes for a game. Or sometimes he wouldn't play at all against a team that didn't really have a small player in their rotation. That could take him completely out of the rotation one night. But with a great training camp, and if Rob Dillingham is showcasing pace, playmaking, and a little bit of scoring chops, you can then start making a case for, all right, we want to play Rob. I know this team doesn't have any small players, but we see the value that we saw the value in October of Rob in training camp. We're going to let him play in this game tonight and rely on Jaden to protect him and Rudy to protect him on defense. I think he can. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think he can. There can be something that's earned that impacts his role and impacts what his opportunity is this season. I don't think he goes into training camp tomorrow with anything guaranteed, which isn't necessarily an indictment of him of anything other than his age, but it's that Naz Reid is a hell of a bench player. Dante DiVincenzo is a hell of a bench player. They're excited about Terrence Shannon Jr. That's 8 right there, I think he's really got to earn. I think he's really got to earn opportunity this season, and that's at least he has the pathway to earn it. Certainly other guys on this team who don't. I think they'll give him that chance, but I think we're settling into the idea of what this is going to be, and it's going to be Mike as the main thing here, and Rob is a little TBD. And I don't think we knew that even a couple weeks ago. Today's show is brought to you by Factor, and when basketball season comes around, we start doing Factor meals at my household. For me, going to games again during the fall, it's really easy to take, what appears to be the easy option and just order more food or order more takeout. But I have learned that Factor is actually faster to make than waiting for a delivery to come. It's cheaper than having food delivered, and it's definitely healthier. That's why I love Factor. Their chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals make it easy to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious, no matter how hectic the season gets. I use Factor, and I really think you should too. Eat smart at factormeals.com/DaneMoore50 off and use code DaneMoore50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code DaneMoore50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Today's show is also brought to you by Skims. I've been telling you about Skims for a long time, but I really do recommend it. If you're getting back into working out, you're getting back into playing basketball this fall, you might not think about it, but Skims men's underwear is great there. I really would compare it to like compression shorts I would wear back in the day when I played basketball or when I would, go on runs. They're just way more comfortable. I have the stretch 5-inch boxer briefs, and I think if you purchase these, you will wear them, be more comfortable. I go to skims.com to purchase, or you can go to a Skims store. But if you do purchase online, in the drop-down menu at the end, when you go to your purchase, they'll ask where you heard about us from. You can find the Dane Moore NBA podcast there. That helps them know that advertising is working. Be more comfortable with Skims at skims.com.
And I think it's going to sound dumb, but I think there's sometimes can be a difference between like an opinion and analysis. I'm not giving you my opinion necessarily on who I think should start or be the all-time quarterback, whatever. I'm just telling you like kind of how it is, right? You know what I mean? Like I don't think this team is ready yet to just, for whatever reason, hand the keys over to Rob Dillingham. And there's so many things that go into that we don't always see behind the scenes, but I just think they trust Mike Conley. I've always said like Chris Finch is more of a conservative coach. I think they trust Mike Conley to get these guys in the right position. But back like in terms of Rob, if he has that Jalen Clark mentality, I don't think 40% from three and guarding the other team's best player is what Rob needs to focus on. But Rob Dillingham, I do think, has more of a path than, like you said, if this team had a young shooting guard, right? Like you have no chance to ever get real minutes. There is still a hole because like I went back to like those old guys. Like Kyle Lowry is older than Mike Conley, and he's going to be working part-time with Michael Grady. Like he's doing Amazon somehow and he's on the Philly roster. Like LeBron's not being asked to be all-time quarterback on the Lakers. Chris Paul is like a complimentary piece on the team that has James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. So they're going to ask a lot of Mike still. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see. One of my biggest takeaways from Mike Conley was him talking about how hard it is, or last season with Ant and Julius, if he wasn't getting the ball to play those 4-minute stints. And like you played pickup basketball. Like if you go out there and there's 3-4 minutes and you're coming out or whatever, that you're not touching the ball, that gets even harder to get into a rhythm. So it's going to be a fine line. I mean, the point guard position to me is still the number one thing of like every training camp day. What are they saying? What are the quotes? How's it going? But the point guard position, I don't think this team can crack that ceiling that you and I have put a firm roof on. I don't think they can crack that if they don't have really strong point guard play from whoever, right? It's going to be a collaboration to do it. And I just think the point guard play last year from anyone who did it wasn't that good. And it should be a point of emphasis this training camp.
No, you're right. And thinking as you're rattling off those older players and some older just older players period in the league, like you're not guaranteed anything. Like you talk about PJ Tucker and Kyle Lowry. A lot of those guys aren't even in rotation or
right.
Certainly not starting lineups. So I don't think we need to feel bad about Mike Conley at all being limited to playing 24, 25 minutes. That's a lot for a 37, 38-year-old guy. And that should probably be all that it is, which leaves at least half of the point guard minutes available.
Right.
And I'm with you. It's going to be pieced together with functionally it being Dante or Ant or Julius or Rob. But there's still a hole, to your point. There's still a hole here. Even if somehow you get Mike Conley plays 71 games this season and plays 24 minutes a game, still 60% of the point guard minutes are available, for the taking.
And you're talking about just game by game, which I think is really smart. I'm thinking conversely of like back-to-backs. I mean, this is inspired by, I saw the video of Devin Booker's man cave with all the old cars he has. But like Mike Conley, the best way in my opinion, for them to use Mike Conley this year is if they're going to take that car out of the garage to drive it hard, like put the ball in his hands more, like drive that car at the top speed for 24 minutes. And then the next night, open up that hole, like on a second night of a back-to-back. Mike even kind of said it himself, like, I don't want to be the old car that you just never go above 30. I don't want to go out there for a 5-minute stint in the first quarter and get one shot and never run a pick and roll. Like, what's my purpose there? So, again, it's going to be a very interesting, it's got to be the number one thing on Chris Finch's agenda for this training camp of how do we get Mike back into the offense? I mean, you've talked a lot about this summer of unlocking Rudy again or getting him more involved. Clearly, Mike is, in terms of rotation players, right? Like the guy that speaks the most French. It's just, I think Mike Conley, for better or worse, whether you agree or not on a team that has Ant and Julius and Nas and Jaden, Mike Conley is still going to be that straw, I think, a lot of nights when he plays that stirs the drink.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% there. And the Nikhil not being here factor, we prescribe a lot to the defense, right? And it's the guy who's guarding the best player when Jaden isn't out there. True. But Nikhil was like a 6'4" guy who played 20 some minutes per game, 6'3". Yeah. He was a guard. They take a guard out of the rotation too, and we'd like to give that to Terrence, but Terrence isn't like a combo guard in the way that Nikhil was. There's a lot of space for 1/2s on this team. And Mike's part of that. Rob's part of that. Dante's part of that. I think it's actually a bigger hole than we think. It's just not going to be clean. So I'm with you. And maybe there needs to be. Mike likes to play back-to-backs. Like he has said.
I know I'm promoting Mike Conley playing, and the Rob Dillingham fans are going to be mad. But like I'm also kind of promoting like you do have to,
but put some control in yourself.
Take the
Mike
keys away from every now and then.
Yeah, like okay, cool. You like that? And his reason is he actually feels like he's in more of a rhythm,
competitive. Yeah.
Because of that, and Finch has talked about it. But I like the drive it hard when Mike is out there, play, and maybe it's 60 games, or maybe it's maybe it is less, but you want a better Mike Conley. I think you have to play him more in a game, or at least longer shifts in that way. So then he's taken off some other nights. Jump at the opportunity, Rob Dillingham. That opportunity is going to for sure be there for Rob periodically through the season, even if we can't say right now, first game of the season, Rob Dillingham is playing 16 minutes a night. That's his role, and it only grows from there. I think it's going to vary, but a role is available, and as Rob struggles with that at all, if not playing again, know that the only thing that's really truly ahead of you on the depth chart is a 38-year-old point guard. There is opportunity here. It's just not like the clear-cut opportunity. And how Rob manages that is a huge story, I think, of not only this season, but the future of this team, because you talk about timeline too. He was drafted 2 years ago with a heavy investment of the 8th overall pick to be a big part of this team. They can't let that slip away. I say that as somebody who thinks Mike should play, but you got to be able to juggle both of them.
And last thing on this, but if you are Chris Finch and you think Mike Conley is still an important straw that serves the drink, or a card that you want to have in the garage to drive it hard, and it's valuable for this team and they need it, well, they need it in April and May. Mm-hmm. And as we saw with some of those other old guys on that list, not to call people in their 36, 37 range old, but they broke down. And that's another thing of like, I know Mike would like to play back-to-backs, and I know Finch would love to have him out there as kind of a steady force, but they do need, and it's a long season, and I'm sure we'll have peaks and valleys, but they do need to give Rob that runway and give someone else that runway, because if Mike is that important, or is as important as you and I maybe think, then they need to use him less almost in the regular season, going back to the driving the car thing, so that it's fresh for when you're going to need him. Because again, the lasting image, I'm sure people listening to this, is Mike Conley having zero impact against the OKC Thunder. I don't remember anyone that really had much of an impact against the OKC Thunder, but it's going to be the minutes are there for Rob. And I thought he looked bigger today, by the way. Like, just like you always wonder, like, did he put on any weight? He looks like he's physically now a little more in year 2 ready to play. So when his number watch, a lot of muscle watch. When his number is called, and his number will be called, I don't know how often early on in the season, but is he ready? And I think, at least listen to some of the other guys talk about him, the vets, I think he will be.
Do you have one final takeaway?
I missed the Dante thing because I was going to watch. They were taking pictures of Jaden in the back doing basketball ball handling stuff. So did Dante, again, a lot of it was Julius. I mean, John Krasinski, as we've talked about, did a really cool thing about Julius feeling at home in Minnesota, and just what the last 2 years have been like for Julius. So that's all on the record. We've had Julius's thoughts and his wife's thoughts and all that stuff. We'd never really heard from Dante. What was Dante's vibe today about just, a year ago, your life was turned upside down. I think he talked about maybe spending his summer here. Like, what was Dante's vibe and health check and all that stuff?
Yeah, he joked about how a year ago he was on a plane, coming here out of nowhere, and that being disorienting.
Yeah.
For him, and they just had a newborn baby and all of those sort of things that complicate that process. But he talked about they lived here this summer, he and his wife and his young child, and that alone seems like a big change from where he was at when he got here almost 12 months ago.
Right.
He did talk about his health, and it was the turf toe injury that he suffered in January last year. Maybe got moved in the starting lineup, played 7 games, hurt his toe in that Golden State game. And he talked about playing the rest of the season with like a steel plate in the bottom of his shoe, which is a common thing for turf toe, so your toe doesn't flex. And Andy and I were talking about this with like Joe Burrow right now, right? Like Joe Burrow's getting the surgery, I think, and that's why he's out for months.
Yeah.
Dante said that he opted not to do the surgery. And he said, I would have been out for 5 months if I would have done the surgery. We did the steel plate last year and I played through it. And he said that's why he didn't play for Italy in Eurobasket or whatever it was this summer. But he made it clear, I'm 110. I think he said I'm 110% healthy, but just because he didn't get the toe surgery and the toe was still somewhat healing or trying to open it up a little bit more out of precaution, that's why he didn't play, which I'd actually kind of forgot that was a thing that Dante DiVincenzo, it was like kind of a thing back in June where it's like, oh, Dante DiVincenzo isn't playing for Italy after getting his citizenship and everything, and it was for an injury. So he clarified it wasn't like a re-aggravation of that or anything. So you should get a fully healthy, a fully acclimated Dante DiVincenzo. And I think we sometimes forget about how impactful that could be. Right? Like he was so much the hype around the trade.
I was going to say, yeah. He was the prize of the trade other than the flexibility. It was, we kept, going back and forth with the Knicks.
That's why the trade happened when it happened, is they agreed to put DiVincenzo in it. And that's why it was so late. And they agreed to put DiVincenzo, and that tilted the scales for the Wolves of, okay, we will trade Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle, who we think can be a big piece, and we get Dante DiVincenzo. And that fueled us to hype Dante DiVincenzo to no end. And we're looking, you're looking back at that playoffs with the Knicks, and he's playing all the time. He looks like one of the most dynamic movement shooters in the entire NBA. He wasn't that with the Timberwolves last year. He just wasn't. Well, it's not like Dante was terrible last year, but he was not the player that he was billed to be 12 months ago when the Wolves acquired him in the trade. I think that player is very much on the table. Dante's in his prime, 28, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a world where we get a significantly better Dante DiVincenzo this season. And I think there's more room to give him more minutes consistently because you don't have that Nikhil piece at the combo guard, somewhat needing to play both of them, right? It would be, I don't even know how Finch did it. Like there'd be games where Dante and Nikhil would play like over 50 minutes combined. That's just hard to do.
Right.
And then if Dante didn't have like a great first half, he would have some lower minute totals. I think the runway is cleared for Dante to be as good of a player as he can be this season. And I don't think that's not just like blowing smoke. There are real reasons: the injury, the trade, the presence of Nikhil. There were a lot of things clouding Dante's impact a season ago, and I think now it's open for him. Like I'd cautiously buy that stock, but with the idea that it could really boom. I really believe that.
I think he's the most interesting player entering training camp for me, because I don't disagree that he has this long runway. And again, like the Knicks version of him in that good year, that great year, if you could just put that on this team, like that would be that. They need that floor spacing, a little creativity off the bounce, like just that shot making. But then I also think that the three young guys on this roster all are guards. Like, and it's just like, I wonder what happens, back to Ant's analogy or, comments on continuity. Like if they come out of the gates fast, but like, let's say he's slowing them down, like how I think Chris Finch really likes him. So I think he would probably have that longer runway, that longer leash. But
Dante, you're saying?
Yeah, Dante. But Dante is the one guy. And again, positions are so fluid now in 2025, but he is the one guy, even though I said I'm kind of buying that stock, that like maybe you buy a put on it or whatever, because if he were to not, if he gives you 10 straight days of 4 or 5 games of 2 for 10 from 3, like that's probably the first domino Chris Finch points at. That's like, all right, I'm going to give him more. I'm going to give TJ some of those minutes. I'm going to give Jalen Clark some more of those minutes, because someone at some point, right? Like this media day is all about muscle watch and the vibes are great and everyone's looking forward to their role. But that shit kind of goes away, the Mike Tyson thing when you get punched in the mouth. And I don't think Naz Reid's going to lose minutes, right?
Yeah, I think Dante is protected in the idea of Rob, right, is we invested in this. We need to grow this plant and reap the benefits of it, right?
Right.
I think the investment in Dante DiVincenzo is just as large.
Okay.
I mean, it was a big piece of that trade. Like, I think Dante's role will be more protected, and they will give it the opportunity and the air that it needs. If you're making the argument that they will play Rob because they drafted him, not you specifically, I think you make the same argument works with Dante of like they're gonna play him because they traded for him and believe in his impact too. I'd be shocked if Dante doesn't have a really, really big role on this team.
No, and I'm just trying to kind of play devil's advocate of when you look at, if we just did 15 minutes on how important 38-year-old Mike Conley is on this, and Ant and Jaden are kind of glued into their roles, and maybe, talked about today at Media Day, like Jaden again having more of a playmaking opportunity, and Julius and Naz and Rudy are kind of this trio of bigs. Just where do you punch a hole in something of, well, if that doesn't work out, maybe that's the easy lever early to pull. I
think the holes are Terrence, Rob, Jalen Clark. I just think the 7 is the 7. And then I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I can't see there being a willingness to go away from Naz, Dante, or Mike. I don't see that.
In an hour-long pod, we've talked about, again, I think Mike Conley will start at point guard against the Portland Trailblazers on October 22nd. You know who their other starters will be, and now this team has gone from 8 starters to maybe 10, but we've done all this stuff. And when people weren't up on stage today doing media day stuff, you're just kind of mingling. I'm talking to Alan Horton, talking to Jim P, talking to all the people who work for the team. And Johan Beringer is going to be someone we talk about down the road. I don't think it's going to be this month, but everyone to a T keeps talking about. And this was kind of his first real media experience today, other than when he got drafted and stuff. But I did just want to kind of mention him because to me, it's like, Rocco Zikarsky and Joe Ingles was hilarious again today, but like he knows he's here to just eat seeds and coach guys up on the sideline. But the Beringer thing is, we talk about the young guys or the timelines. I think the young guys this year, when I say that, will be Rob, Terrence, and Jalen. But they got this 6'10", super well polished. Jim Pete said he's just dunking and catching everything in practices and these 5-on-5 scrimmages. So that's not something that's probably going to be at the forefront of the regular season. Maybe he'll get some.
No, but I'm glad you brought it up, because when we did a podcast a month ago, we had Beringer in the
Iowa.
Yeah, out of an Iowa, exactly. So it's something to consider. Absolutely. The other thing to consider is there's 240 minutes. You know what I mean? And holes. You want to play any of these guys, somebody else has to not play. I'm just saying, I think the top 7's minutes are protected, and then it's filling in whatever 8 and 9 are available. Minutes are available for the 8th and 9th man, and I don't know. I'm kind of guessing that'll change night to night. It hasn't really always been a Finch thing. I should say that makes sense to me. If there's like a night, Jalen Clark is playing in this game this night because there's a matchup that he would be valuable for. Yeah. And then the next night, the second unit doesn't have a strong creator. It's like, okay, why are we playing Jalen Clark if he's not guarding the ball? You know what I mean? Don't play him then, right? Play Rob Dillingham. And I don't know enough about being a coach or a player to know how much that would throw off your rhythm. But I think the uniqueness of this roster construction makes it make sense to have it be kind of like an on night, off night for guys at the end of the rotation. And we need it, to your point, need to throw Beringer somewhat into that mix, given what we have heard about him.
Yeah. And again, how does he impact the 25-26 Timberwolves? I don't know. Probably not much. Does he move the needle? It's just people that either call the games, have played the games, work in the front office, people that you and I really, really respect. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about a player or a young prospect the way they talk about him. And it's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind, because if he's as good as some of the people within that organization think he's going to be, he might just get to a point where he just forces you to, because he does kind of hit on all the stuff that Chris Finch wants you to do, right? Just do X.
Theoretically,
do X
yeah.
And play defense, which is a Chris Finch. I mean, we probably need to retire the offensive wizard thing. I think Chris Finch would much rather have a team play tough as nails defense than be an offensive juggernaut. But just an interesting little anecdote, because again, other than him saying, when I asked him like, hey, Johan, like, what's your favorite thing about Minnesota? And he says he's a big fisher, which I was like, can't think of a better place than Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes. But he's a very quiet, reserved person you're not going to interact with much this season. But the people that get to go to the behind the scenes stuff say he is tough and athletic. And I think that'll be something fun down the road to see where he fits into this. As you just said, we're pretty much now in the second timeline with some older veteran spices. We're in it now. It is Anthony Edwards' team, and he made that clear today at Media Day. Jaden said more words than ever, and Nas is going to wear a headband.
Yes, that is. Yeah, we didn't even talk about headband Nas. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, there were a lot of great clips and stuff like that. And as maybe we do more player specific segments, some of the things that Kyle and I were referencing today, like I did last season, I'll play the clips, and we'll get stuff at training camp here. These are where the breadcrumbs come from of what is going to happen during the season that started. And it, as it always does, it started at Media Day today. So we'll keep talking about all these things, and we'll get more at practice in the coming days. But this is pod 1 of the season, and tomorrow morning, you and I are going to record with Alan Horton as well, and keep this thing moving.
I had forgotten about this. I was excited to fly in today and do Media Day, and I'm really excited for people that don't know Alan Horton yet or have only heard him on the radio. I think I'd interviewed him a couple of years ago, but like, I'm really excited for him. Everyone within the organization is excited for him to kind of be the Grady fill-in and call out of these games on TV. But I had forgotten that as we record this Monday night, September 29th, they play basketball on Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, there's a Timberwolves preseason basketball game this week. And I think that's fun because now we've really gotten into it. We had all the Brit articles. You've done 1,000 pods this month, but we are just a couple of days away of them kind of building off that continuity, building off all the good things that happened in the 24-25 season, and then seeing it on Saturday, like the first image of what does this refined recipe kind of look like. And I'm excited because at some point you do kind of get tired of just talking about all the buzzwords, and it's like, I want to see these guys play basketball, and that's coming this week.
Yeah, it always comes like so fast. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
They're gonna be playing a game. I don't know if we'll get the most refined version of the team or their opponent on Saturday, but we will get to see the Wolves play. We'll have a bunch of pods before then. Again, starting with Alan Horton tomorrow. It'll be me and Kyle. We'll talk with Alan about Alan getting the play-by-play job, but we'll also just talk.
His story is
more
really
about
cool.
the team.
Yeah.
Yes. Both Alan's story and he's just what he's thinking about this team this year. So that's coming up next on the pod. We will record that on Tuesday morning. So it'll come out Tuesday afternoon. Appreciate you being here, Kyle. Until tomorrow morning with Alan. He's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Grinning hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.